Hello, everybody, and welcome to the late edition of Titled Tuesday. We are one round in, and we are watching round two right now. All of the action is still ahead of us. I'm GM Daniel Naroditsky. It is a pleasure to welcome you all this evening to yet another exciting edition of Titled Tuesday. I commentated, I think, a week ago. It was fantastic. I often play. This is a perspective that I really enjoy having as well. Now, on the screen in front of us is one of the top games between Krikor, who has the white pieces, against Dimitri on Draken with the black pieces. And we're watching an endgame here. This looks pretty balanced, though. Krikor with not much time on the clock. Let's see how this one goes down. All right, so G3 defending the knight. Knight E5 looks like Draken is going to win this one. The pawn on F3 is hanging. All right. All right, bishop E2. Back he goes. This is not looking great. Oh, wait, Draken's already down a pawn. So he's actually just restoring material equality. The rook takes A4. All right, let's see. Bishop takes F3. What's going on to the pawn count? 6 seconds for Krikor. This is looking 2 seconds for Krikor. He takes on E6. Now, rook takes F4. There's rook takes E5, so I guess he's okay. This is going to be close. All right, let's see. Draken taking his time here. Knight G4. Bishop takes F3. He wants knight H2, knight F3, and then rook F4. And he's winning the pawn endgame. He's going to be up a pawn. And wait, king G5. It's not over yet. Krikor trying to win H6 here. H7, but I think Draken's king is too close to white's pawns. Simply F4. And this is completely winning. King E3. Draken is first to the party. So he's going to win. He's on 2 out of 2, and he's one of the top seeds. Okay, we can trust Draken to win this one. King D2, I think, just ends the game. Okay, Vladislav Artemiev just checkmated his opponent, Alexander Fear. I'm just going to shift the board here. Yeah, and he is also, of course, a pre-tournament favorite. I would say Draken and Artemiev are probably the two major favorites. Let's see who else is still playing. We have Mishanik. That's Alexei Sarana. He's got the white pieces. Looks like he's also going to win. Yeah, he's just up a piece here. Rook is coming to C8. That's over as well. I love hunting for upsets, but I'm not seeing any at the top. Though Christopher Yu, he's got 2 seconds, 3 seconds against Dimitri Goltsev. What a move. G6. King F8 with 1 second. There was a mate threat with Rook B8. Low! 1.8 seconds. Can Christopher make it? It looks actually pretty balanced here. Looks very drawish. Rook D7. I think he's fine. Okay, GF, King F7. This should be a draw, but Christopher with 2.8 seconds. Still kind of an upset, as Dimitri Goltsev is going to nick Christopher Yu for a draw. 1.6 seconds. Oh my god. He's giving me a heart attack here. Okay. Now let's see what goes on here. Knight takes C6, Fe6. Yeah, this is going to be a draw, as Christopher has stabilized the situation. Okay. Let's see here. Rook A7, King G5. Now black is going to capture on G4, take on H5 with check, and then get behind the pawn. Now white has to be a little bit careful. Wait a minute. Christopher might still win this. Oh my goodness. G7, King F5, King F6. Black's going to be 2 pawns up, and Dimitri managed to mess this up. Christopher, I think, is going to win this endgame. 2 pawns up now. He should be able to finish this off with 4 seconds on the clock for white. All right. King G3, H5. He's pushing both of these pawns in order. King H3, King F5, he goes. Now this king is going to go to E4 and then E3. This should be winning for black. This should be winning for black. Yeah, King E4, although white is giving these side checks. Now Christopher might have to give up one of his pawns in order to try to promote the other one. And I think he's doing the right thing. He's going to go E4. And then he's going to build up a Lucina position. Just don't go rook f1 there. That would have lost the rook. This is winning now. This is now officially winning. He's got white's king cut off, so this is pretty easy, actually. This is actually very easy, I should say. This is very easy. Rook g5, king f2. Yeah, this one is all over. He's going to build the bridge. Christopher learned this when he was about 2 years old. King e4. Haha, rook f1, what a move. Hoping for the stalemate after he takes f1 queen. Now, if Christopher had auto queen on, that actually was a really smart trick, but Christopher doesn't fall for it. He checkmates Goltsev, and he gets to 2 out of 2. We've got Maxim Matlakov, who just won, beating Polina Shavalova. He's, of course, the winner of the last Rapid Chess Championship, so he's in great form, feeling super confident. And let's see if we can find any other games that are still going. All right, we have Bluebaum here, who already drew. Most of the games are finishing up. Ferysev still playing. Nope. Round 3 is underway. So round 2 is done. Round 3 is underway. Let's update the standings. And we've got obviously still a huge group, as you can see, with 2 out of 2 that's going way past 10 people. Once round 3, round 4 happens, then the field begins to thin out. We have in front of us Vitic, that's FIDE Master, I think Vyacheslav Vitic against Vladimir Ferysev, who is a mainstay at the title Tuesday. He's won several of them. He's always at the top. And a London system here. And white plays the move c4, which is not very common of a move to play in the London. A little bit dubious in my opinion. It does give black the b4 square, so maybe black can play e6 and then try to stick a knight on b4 and sneak it into c2. Vladimir going knight a5, so he's attacking the queen, and he's trying to take this c-pawn on his terms. c4 is a really bad move, and knight a5 is actually a perfectly legitimate response. The queen has to move, then Vladimir's going to take on c4 with the knight, and at the end of the day, white's going to be left with this isolated pawn on d4. Black's going to get 2 bishops. This is already kind of going off the rails for Vitic. Knight takes c4. There it is. All right, dc4. Yeah, this should be very comfortable for Vladimir. Queen takes c4, rook c8, and then e6, and he's going to get something to d5, blockading that isolated pawn. Okay, so we can trust Ferysev to nurture his advantage here. We also have Vladislav Artemiev, who's got the black pieces against international master Jackie 72 from Belgium. A pretty balanced position here. And Artemiev doesn't play in all of the Title Tuesdays, but when he does, I feel like he generally scores very, very well. I could probably get you some stats on whether he's won. I think he's won. I think he's won before. He is Sib Elephant. Now, I'm not enthralled with black's position here. I feel like this is quite equal. White could try to go f3 and block the knight from coming into e4. That seems reasonable. Rook e1 chosen by Jackie. Now, Artemiev could play knight e4, but then white could trade that off with his bishop and then push the d-pawn up to d5. So Vladislav preferring a more tame response, bishop e6. Okay, so rook ac1, knight c5. White's got a pretty comfortable position here. This is going to be pretty difficult for Artemiev to actually win. Rook ac1 chosen by the Belgian master. And what exactly is Artemiev going to do to unbalance this position? Let's see. Bishop takes c4, d4, rook takes c4, and there's the answer. He's actually sacrificed a pawn, but he's gotten himself a really nice square on d5. But is this sacrifice justified? I don't know. I mean, if he goes bishop d5, then white takes on e8, and white had knight b6 in that position. Knight b4 by Artemiev, that's the idea. He's trying to take on a2. And if he gets that pawn, then the knight on b3 is going to lose protection. So white goes knight a c5. Very tense position all of a sudden. Now bishop d5 looks good. And white's going to be stably a pawn up, but Artemiev has really, really nice minor pieces here. So let's see what happens. The next couple of moves are going to decide a lot. There's bishop d5. A trade of rooks on e8. White goes a3, shooing away the knight. Now the knight can come back to c6. It does. Artemiev has to keep tabs on this pawn on b7. It can't be captured right now because the knight on b3 is hanging. Black threatens b6. That's a big threat. b6 wins a piece because if this knight moves, then you lose the other one. Okay. Rook E1 by white, attacking the queen, getting the rook to an open file. Artemiev has a lot of work to do to win this position. White's still very solid. Queen C8, but he's aiming at G4. He's aiming at G4. He's so good in these types of positions. Let's see. Now, white doesn't have time to play H3 because of B6, so he tries to solve both problems at once. Queen up to E3. So this defends the knight. B6 is no longer as dangerous, and if black goes Queen G4, then white's going to respond with Queen G3, intercepting with his queen. I like that move a lot. Oh, and I apologize. That was the Romanian flag, not the Belgian flag. Romanian International Master. Thank you for the correction. All right, so let's see what Artemiev does. He's down to 44 seconds. This might be an upset in the making. He's almost a minute down on the clock. He's down a pawn. I think he's got enough compensation for equality, but probably not more than that. And if he wants to win the pawn back, he can go B6 and then take on B3 and take on D4. But that's not a good way to try to generate winning chances. Now he's a full minute down. B6, 94. Now, will he take on B3 and kind of acquiesce to a very symmetrical position? He might not even win the pawn back because the pawn on B6 is going to hang at the end. He's got 17 seconds. Oh my goodness. Knight B to D2. Now white gets that knight out of the danger zone, maybe rerouting it to F3 potentially. And rook E8 was not possible because of knight F6 check, discovering an attack against the rook. Now Artemiev could grab on E4 and grab on D4, and that looks like it's heading headfirst toward a draw. No, he goes King F8, preparing rook E8, taking the king out of the danger zone, but in comes white's knight, knight E5. White's definitely better now. Let's see. Queen C6. Now we could see a trade on C6, and white could drop the other knight back to C3. Definitely white is in the driver's seat here in 7 seconds for Vladislav. And Ferysev, in the meantime, has already won his game. That was not a surprise given the way the opening went. Now, white has to be careful too, because if you go knight C3, you drop the pawn on G2. Oh, no, you don't, because knight C3 threatens queen E7 check. I think knight C3 is a great move in this position. Instead, white goes F3. Now Artemiev probably going to slide his rook to E8. He does. And white is... Let's see, what is white going to do? Because now if you move your queen back to D2, you allow bishop takes E4. You allow bishop takes E4. Did Andreykin lose? Let's see. Andreykin lost to Beardson. Thomas Beardson, very powerful blitz player. Defeating Dimitri Andreykin, so his form doesn't quite hold up. But Artemiev is struggling here. He offers a queen trade. All right, queen H7 check. White keeps the queens on the board. This looks winning. King G8, though. No, Artemiev escaping, and now he's threatening F5. Maybe. I think white should have traded queens. I think Jackie should have traded queens. Now black threatens F5. Bishop C4, forcing the rook onto an undefended square. Rook C2, Artemiev with a second. Queen D5, attacking D4. Now rook D2 looks correct. Queen G7, A4. Artemiev doesn't know what to do. Queen takes B6 is winning for white. White's taking everything. Just take the pawn on B6 and it's winning. And now Queen C7 wins the bishop. Or Queen B4, it's over. He plays Knight F6, that also works. That's a fork. Rook takes C4 ends the game. And that's it. He's up a knight. He should be able to finish this off, but 3 seconds now for white. And that's it. This is over. Rook C7, Queen C7, anything wins. Queen C8 forces the queen trade. He goes Queen B8, so he's going for checkmate. And Artemiev almost flagging there. Now he's getting mated. He's trying to run away with his king. It's amazing that he's surviving this as long as he is. G4, King H4. No, Artemiev resigned. I thought King H4 actually stayed in the game for a little bit longer. But what a game by Jackie as Christopher Yu. He's going to win his game. You can see here. Let's see. We have Brandon Jacobson. Also, he's down a full rook. Unfortunately for Brandon, he is down a full rook for no compensation. It's just rook and bishop against knight. He's going to lose to Nikita Matinyan, who is also a very dangerous Title Tuesday player. His only hope is a fork. But a grandmaster, of course, should not miss a fork in such a position. Let's see. All that white needs to do is surround this pawn. And once he wins it, black runs out of defensive chances. Brandon with a tough loss here in round 3. Okay, let's see what other games we have remaining. Just a couple. We have Vathi coming. I think that is Murali Kartikian, but don't quote me on that. Looks like he's going to make a draw. against Chati 17 from Hungary. And in fact, white is the one who's got to be careful as black's got these pawns and time pressure. This is difficult to defend as black's making progress here. Rook f3, rook a2. Is white going to lose this? f4, there's knight takes f4. Nope, knight takes f4. He should have taken that pawn. That would have been a draw. Now, black still has his 2 pawns. f3, check. Uh-oh. King is pushed back to d1. Bishop c1, almost. Black is almost winning, but knight f3 check, he wins the pawn. And white should be able to hold this. Now that he won the pawn, white's got just enough to hold this position. And now, if anything, black's got to be careful not to blunder his rook and not to walk into something like rook f6, bishop b2. I would just take one of white's minor pieces and call it a draw. Okay, knight back to f3, king d5. 1 second here for white. Both players on their last seconds. This is probably the last game of the round. He made his move with 0.8 left. Knight f3, rook e2. Black's still trying to win this. Black's still trying to catch him unawares, get him to blunder a piece. Oh my god, he blundered the rook! He blundered the rook! Oh my god, that's exactly what I said might happen. He got to comfortably blunder the rook, and now we're going to see a knight and bishop checkmate. And obviously, Murali, he probably learned this mate years and years and years ago. That is unbelievable. You can't allow that if you're black. You had to take one of those minor pieces. And Murali already has the king in the corner. It's not the right corner, but he's going to use the bishop and the knight to get him into the right corner, drawing a W with his knight. Knight is going to go to e6 when the time is right, and then to g7. And the king is being shoehorned into the appropriate corner. Knight e6 here, or bishop d4 is the mating. Now bishop back to f2, knight e6, there it is, knight g7, and then king f6 is the simplest mating pattern, nicely demonstrated by Karthikeyan. Black is going to be kicking himself after that game. He was firmly in the driver's seat, blundering the rook, and knight f8 has made a 140 move game, and what an absolute miracle right there. As we update our standings, let's have a look as round 4 is about to get underway. We can see here a very large contingent with 3 out of 3. And that extends all the way down to Kamsky, who's Tigr Slab, and even below. There's right about 25 players with 3 out of 3. So nothing is decided just yet. Let's come back to our board scene and let's see what the top games of the round are going to be. We have Ferysev. We have Kamsky against Bahadur Jababa. What an interesting matchup. And Gada is off to a great start in this Title Tuesday. Now, I always like to say Gada has it in him to win a Title Tuesday. I think that 1 second increment really helps him avoid getting flagged. And if Gada avoids getting flagged, I mean, there's very few who can compete with him in his types of positions. And he is a pioneer of the London system as he plays it here against Bahadur, who plays this kind of inventively, getting this knight to c6. That's not something you see every day in a London. Usually you see black's pawn advanced to c5. Okay. Well, this is an interesting setup. Knight comes out to e5, blocking the relation between the bishops here. Bishop probably will come out to d3. That's where it generally is developed in the London. Gada goes more modestly, bishop e2. Maybe he wants to go bishop f3 here and contest black's bishop. That's on the long diagonal. The last thing you want to do here with black is knight takes e5. So Bahadur dropping his bishop back to e7. I think he's preparing to play d6 to dislodge white's knight from e5. So maybe this would be the time to go bishop f3. That would preclude d6 because black would, of course, blunder the knight. Okay, let's see what happens here. Maybe queen e8 could be considered. No, queen e8 would blunder the pawn. Knight takes c6 and bishop takes c7. All right, d5 by Bahadur. So that's kind of a concession. That means that white's going to keep a piece on e5 if he wants to. He can put a bishop on e5, but a bishop on e5 is less effective. I think Bahadur has done a pretty good job here. I think black has succeeded in equalizing. Bishop d6. This looks very, very dry. Let's move to some of our more colorful games. We've got Conrad Holtz, very strong American grandmaster and powerful blitz player, facing off against Bogdan Deac from Romania. They're both on 3 out of 3, and a slightly better position for white, I want to say. Black's rook is currently under fire and has no squares, But bishop takes a4 and knight d6 would save the rook. But then there's queen a3 in that position. So wait a minute. Is black losing the exchange here? Bishop takes a4, queen takes a4, knight d6, queen a3. Oh, and then there's knight b5 in that position. I think Bogdan might be not seeing that. In that resulting position, there's knight b5, and if you take it, black recaptures with the a pawn, and the queen is going to be under fire from the a8 rook. So there is a way, a roundabout way to save the exchange. He goes knight d6. Oh, and he finds another way to save the exchange. He goes knight d6 first. Now he takes on a4. Now both bishops are hanging. If white goes queen a3, black can just calmly move the rook to e8. And anytime white takes black's bishop, black takes white's bishop. And we get an opposite colored bishop situation. I think the worst is behind him. I think Bogdan has succeeded in stabilizing the situation. Okay. Let's see what he does. He goes a5. Now, further on, we have Christopher Yu, who is also playing. Ferysev is playing the vanquisher of Vladislav Artemiev, Jackie 72. This is Vladimir Feryshev's game. He's got the white pieces. Very complex Ruy Lopez brewing here. Looks pretty balanced to me. Black can try to get this c-pawn moving with bishop b7 and c5. Ferysev centralizes his knight. Maybe he'll get his bishop to b3 at some point with a check. This is very complex. Hard to say who's got the upper hand here. And okay, c4. What's going on here? Is Ferysev offering a trade of pawns? But if black takes the pawn on c4, then after queen takes c4 and bishop a4, white's got the skewer against black's rook. But if black doesn't take on c4, then white was threatening c takes b5. So black responds by playing c5 himself. And I think he's going to follow up with b5, b4, and then meet bishop a4 with bishop c6. A good response here by Jackie. And Ferysev dropping down to 1 minute, which is pretty rare for him. He's usually not down on the clock in blitz games. That's a sign that Jackie 72 is no one to sneeze at. He beat Artemiev, and now he's got a pretty nice position and a big time advantage against Ferysev. So we'll see how this goes. Oh, and c takes b5, a piece sacrifice by Vladimir, who tries to get a massive pawn phalanx on the queen side. So he's going to take on a6. And then I think he's going to get this b-pawn moving by moving this bishop out of the way. So he might go bishop c4 and then try to get this b-pawn moving forward. He can also pick up the pawn on d4, and that will give him 3 pawns for the piece, which is sufficient compensation material-wise. But since it's a middle game, the pieces are often more valuable than the pawns. So bishop back to a8 goes Jackie. This looks quite promising, actually, for Ferysev. He goes bishop a4. I didn't like that decision by black because this allows white to supercharge the movement of this pawn. Now Ferysev could go b4, b5 really quickly and connect these 3 pawns in black's territory. This looks really, really dubious for black. Can he restrain Feryshev's pawns? I don't think so. 45 seconds on the clock for black. This seems like a very hard position to play in time pressure. Real fast, I'm keeping an eye on our other top games, including that of Kamsky. We've got so many players with 3 out of 3. We can't watch them all. We've got Hans Niemann, who is about to lose his game to JC Ibarra, Grandmaster from Spain. And he is going to defeat Hans Niemann, who is, of course, pretty warmed up playing the world champion and others. At the Aim Chess tournament, King D1, white not blundering the queen there with bishop f4. This is over, so Hans is going to lose. And a slight upset. Ibarra, very, very strong blitz player. Thomas Beardson, his Cinderella run comes to an end as Maxim Matlakov continues his excellent form and defeats Beardson, who of course had beaten Andreichman. Look at what Ferysev is doing to poor Jackie. Look at where his pawns are, and there's the answer. Was he able to stop the pawns? Well, you tell me. And black is about to resign here. White's going to make another queen and probably 2 more queens. And that's at a minimum, because this a-pawn could also promote. No threats on white's king. White's king is perfectly safe. A takes b8. Rook takes b8 also works, probably even more accurate, because allows white to promote. Okay, rook takes b8. And that's it. White has 2 queens. Black has 1. And now white wins the rook. What a total destruction here by Ferysev, who moves to 4 out of 4. We've got a time scramble going, and I think Kamsky is going to win another one. He's now up 2 pawns. He's up 2 pawns and plenty of time on the clock against Jababa. Rook takes f6. He completely outplayed him in an equal endgame. Now, he's got to put some finishing touches on this game. It's not totally over yet. He can go after this a-pawn, and he does. Bahadur is going to go after White's kingside pawns and try to get some counterplay going, but he's not going to be able to because White's going to have at least one pawn left, and that pawn's going to prevent Black's pawn from moving forward. That's it. It's over. a5, b4. This is easy as pie. Kamsky will have no problems converting this, and f4 now would have traded the pawns, but this is also good. Rook back to d3. Jababa is going to resign any second now. King b6. And that's it. Jababa resigns, and Gata Kamsky moves to 4 out of 4. What a start by the legend. And we have Zhigalko facing off against Sarana, who trying to push this all the way to a win, and I think he's going to be successful. h3, Rook g8. Is this a draw? No, I think this is winning. h2 and king g1. And Sergei Zhigalko is going to lose this game. Rook g2, and this is a classic thing. h1 queen. Okay, king h2, and that is it. And Zhigalko is forced to resign. Vathi, who of course got very lucky last round. He was the guy who mated with knight and bishop, and he is not going to waste that luck. He wins another game. We've got 3 games remaining. One of them, Alexander Kosteniuk, who's got 2 out of 3. And she's facing off against one random. That's Aaron Jacobson, Brandon's brother. And Alexander is trying to push this position to a victory, but I don't think she's going to be successful. It looks like White's got everything under control. I don't know if Alexander can ever play h3 in this position. She could try, wait, but she might take the pawn. She goes h3, wait, she's got the king cut off. I think she might succeed here. Bishop c5, king e2, and rook f1. And Kosteniuk is going to win this game, or is she? King f3. White still has a chance here because Black's king is tied down to the pawns. Wait a second, this might still be a draw. King c6, h6. Yeah, this is a draw, and what a save there by one random who makes it just in the nick of time. Black's king was just a little too slow, and Kosteniuk will be forced to give up her rook for that pawn. That's a draw, and I think that was our last game of the round. Yes, it was. Round 4 is in the books. Let's update our standings. We've got a pretty large contingent here with 4 out of 4. You can see here 12 players still have a perfect score, including a FIDE master and Christopher Yu, who is an IM in name only. He has all of his GM norms. Some of the favorites still on top. And Gata Kamsky, he is one to watch. He is in fantastic form this tournament. So great start to the event. We're watching the late edition of Title Tuesday, a 5-minute or so break for fair play check. And to give the players a break, we will be back with round 5 in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the late edition of Titled Tuesday. Round 5 is underway. We've got a pretty big group with 4 out of 4, 12 players to be exact. They include the legend Gada Kamsky, and they include some of the Title Tuesday mainstays, Bogdan Dimitri being one of them, young Romanian Grandmaster, as he faces Murali Karthikeyan from India, who won that crazy game with the 2 pieces against the rook. And he's going to try to make the most out of this unexpected opportunity. Okay, but I want us to give some love to Gada Kamsky. I want to see how far he can go. So we're going to focus on his game for now because he's playing none other than Mr. Ferysev, and he needs no introduction at all. So, you know, Mechanic fans, Deach fans, I'll keep an eye on their games too, but let's see how far Gada can go. He's got a perfect score. Something tells me, and it's not that I've ever prophesied anything in my life, but something tells me this might be the Tuesday. This might be the Tuesday that the legend reemerges from his lair and delivers a victory. Let's see. We have a very symmetrical position here as Gada has elected to play a Berlin, and Ferysev responding with a very peaceful Rook E1 variation. This is completely equal. I mean, this is as good as it gets for black. And this really is. Bishop takes d3, queen d3, queen d7 I would play. Gada solidifying his structure with c6. I mean, you can see how symmetrical it is. With full respect to both of these, what a boring position this is. So we'll keep an eye on this game. But for now, since the position is as symmetrical as it is, let's hunt for something a little bit more spicy. We have Matlakov with the black pieces against Nikita Matinyan, who defeated Brandon Jacobson earlier, and who now, I think, is a pretty nice position against Matlakov. I mean, he's just played rook c5. He wants to double his rooks on the c-file. This knight on c6 is very loose, and if it has to move, behind that knight stands a weak pawn on c7. So White's got a lot of potential energy, but on the other hand, White also has this weakness on d3 that Maxim could try to attack. How can he try to attack it? Well, he could consider rook a d8, rook ec1, and he could even take on d3 and temporarily sacrifice the knight and then try to go e4 at the end of the line, dislodging the knight. Remember that that rook is going to be making contact with the bishop. So there's a lot of tactics here that has to be fully examined as Maxim drops down to 1:15. He's down 40 seconds. He goes more passive, rook a b8, and I think he wants to lift this rook up to b6 in order to lend much needed support to the knight. There he goes, rook b6. White could triple on the c-file here with queen c2, though. And the pressure continues to mount here as Matinyan is doing a great job so far of holding Matlakov down. He goes bishop b3, improving the placement of his bishop, aiming at the rook. This is looking really nice for Nikita. And I've played him a couple times in Title Tuesdays. He is forced to be reckoned with when he's in good form. So something to keep a major eye on. Back we go to the Bogdan Dimitri game. And Bogdan, with a minute on the clock already after only 19 moves have been made, and it seems like he's bitten off more than he can chew on the king side. He goes e5 in this position. What a move. And what's going on here? Well, if black takes the rook, then white takes the bishop, and then white is simultaneously attacking the knight and the rook. So he can't do that. Black can go knight d5 here and put the knight in between the two bishops. That would seem to be a reasonable option, as Murali is taking his time now to calculate this chaotic position. Bishop takes f3 could also be thrown in. So for black, he has to decide whether he wants the trade of bishops or will he want the immediate knight d5. This looks like a very complicated position, quite dubious for white. White still hasn't castled, but neither has black. Anything could happen here. Anything could happen in 50 seconds now as Murali is taking the lion's share of his time trying to figure this one out. Okay. And back... okay, in Gada's game, it's still very, very balanced, but Gada is down to 30 seconds on his board. Still looks pretty equal. It's an endgame, queen and knight against queen and knight. Vladimir Ferysev trying to use pressure on the clock and get Gada to make a mistake, but Gada is so good in these very solid equal endgames. Queen f5. I think white might have a tiny edge, though. He's got this pawn on h5, which is deep freezing. It's clamping down on black's kingside pawns. Gada has to be a little bit careful not to get kind of pushed off the board as he offers a queen trade. Okay, let's see what Ferysev does here. He declines it. He goes knight f4, queen g4, aiming at the g7 pawn, Gada getting his knight back to f8, and indeed, Nikita Matinyan, he won Matlakov's knight on c6, and he wins the game. He moves to 5 out of 5. Gada offers another queen trade here, and Ferysev accepts it this time because he goes knight e6. He is hunting for Gada's pawns, and Gada's hunting for Vladimir's pawns. b3 though, and how does black defend against knight d8? Knight d8 might be a huge threat here. Oh, and Gada wants to get his knight through c8 to d6 and defend the b7 pawn just in time. Okay. All right. Let's see here. How is this going to end? b3, knight d6. King f3, king f7. Both sides getting their king up. Okay. Let's see. g4. Now Vladimir down to 30 seconds. b6 chasing the knight away. Now Gada gets his knight active. c4 undermining the knight. Okay. And by the way, Murali, he is, wow, an amazing position in Danya's game. Look at this time scramble. It looks like he's going to win his game. Black's king is on f6. White's king is really safe. Let's see if Bogdan can get this full point out of this position. Rook back to h3. He's trying to get it to f3 and pin the queen. There goes b4 as Murali tries to open up White's king and get counterplay. Bogdan with 5 seconds. Queen takes d4 check. And now White's king up to b3. Queen d5 check. Now c4 would cover all the checks there. I thought c4 was good. He gets his king to a3, tucks it away. a5. Black continues to try to open up the position. b5. Who is going to get to whose king first? Queen d2. Now rook f3 check. The king can hide on g7. Okay, now it's Black's turn. Maiden 1. And Maiden 1 was missed. And Murali somehow pulls out another one from the jaws of defeat. And look at this idea. Look at this idea by Ferysev. This is unbelievable. He's just taken on g7 and gone h6. This is a classic study-like idea. King f7, h7, and the pawn cannot be stopped. And Gada is dealt a blow by Vladimir Ferysev with a beautiful tactic. Look at this position. He's going to lose on time. But after king f7, h7, the knight blocks the king from stopping the pawn. There's no forks in sight. And White promotes to a queen. He can't go to g8. That's illegal. And Ferysev, he's always so tricky, so resourceful. He gets to 5 out of 5. We're watching David Parabian en route to defeating Matthias Bluebaum as he's going to promote his pawn, force Black to give up their knight. And notice the pawn, as Robert Hess would say, most important thing, the pawn is the right color. a8 is a light color and White is a light squared bishop. So it checks out. Just a couple of games remaining. We have Andreykin here who's trying to climb back to the top of Title Tuesday Olympus after that early loss. And he is playing a very capable Grandmaster Aram Hakobian and only managing a draw there. As Hakobian, who had 3.5 out of 4, moves to 4 out of 5. A couple of games remaining. Dry County Grandmaster looks like he's about to make a draw with E. Chiteri, Polish Canada Master, I think also a streamer. And this is going to be a perpetual check. Of course, Black cannot make any progress whatsoever. We've got one other game here. Carlitos 2004 squeezing out a win against Ali Rasbad, who's a pretty strong FIDE master. That's a good win. And a resignation there. A draw in Dry County's game. And one game remaining. Godzilla against Axel Bachmann, Paraguayan Grandmaster, who is having a rough Title Tuesday, only managing 1.5 out of 4. He has to win quite a few games here, but he's not even managing to win this next one. This is a theoretical draw. The point is that Black's king can never get out of the box, and there we go. King g3, rook takes h2, White takes the last pawn, and we have a rook versus rook. Let's just hope that they don't play this for too long, because we know what can happen in Title Tuesdays with that 1 second increment. One of the sides should just offer a draw or repeat moves, and they are thankfully repeating moves. The round is over. Okay. And already, just like that, round 5 is complete. Round 6 is upon us. Halfway through the late edition of Title Tuesday, let's update the standings here, and I'll show you the complete list here. We have now only 6 players with 5 out of 5. It includes King of the Nil, FIDE Master. Let's watch his game. What an incredible accomplishment to have 5 out of 5. We have Murali, Nikita Matinyan, Ferysev, and Sarana. Perhaps arguably the only 2 pre-tournament favorites still with a perfect score, and Christopher Yu, who is having himself a fantastic event. We're going to have some massive matchups here. We've got King of the Nil against Christopher Yu. And let's watch this Mystery FM from France. Okay. Let's see. 95. Okay. So e6, there's knight takes c6 and bishop a6. That wins the exchange. Wait a second. This is already getting dangerous for black. So the point is, if e6 now, knight c6, bc, bishop a6, rook has only one square, and bishop b7 traps the rook. I've done that many, many times. So black has to be very, very cautious, and he goes back to d7. I like what he just did there. Bishop back to d7, cautious move. And knight takes d7, knight takes d7. White will have the two bishops, which is, I guess, pleasant, but nothing special. Okay, he plays queen takes d7. So for black, it's going to be important to complete his kingside development. e6, bishop d6. This was a London system, and Christopher continues to try to put pressure as he tries to get his other knight to e5, so he might have the same idea once again. I didn't like queen takes d7. I thought that king of the nil should have taken with a knight and, eliminated problems along this diagonal. Now, even if he plays a6 to chase the bishop away, white will still have knight e5, and now I think Christopher's going to put that knight on e5, and then he's going to castle, and maybe black gets away with this, because now, if knight c6 and bishop a6, there is a check on a5, and black picks up the bishop. So Christopher, he's going to have to castle, and that tempo can be used by black to get this bishop out and create potential escape squares for his rook. So I think that black is actually doing fine here by the skin of his teeth. Let's see what Christopher comes up with. He's taking his time, trying to find some way to punish black for delaying his kingside development, but I don't see a way. Okay. Let's check out some of the other top games here. We have Michanik, that's Serrana against Murali. And Murali has built up a very powerful pawn center, but it's counterbalanced by a monster knight that's sitting right in white's grill. And that's the knight he's trying to eliminate with knight to e1. Doesn't look pretty, but totally understandable. White trying to trade off black's strongest piece. Notice that these GMs, even in blitz games, they apply important positional concepts like trading off your opponent's strongest piece. And you can see a lot of high-level maneuvering. Okay, now a choice for Alexei. Does he move his knight back to e5? Does he take on b2? If you take one of the pieces, I would say take the bishop, because taking that knight on e1 just doesn't look appetizing. He does take the bishop, but now white has eliminated black's massive knight, and Alexei trying to activate his remaining minor pieces, bishop out to c5, pinning the f pawn, which is important because the e4 pawn is hanging, and white can no longer play f3 and defend it. If black can get to this pawn, then the d5 pawn stops looking as intimidating. And knight f3 by white, he's allowing Alexei to take the pawn on e4. I think what Karthikeyan is saying is, okay, I'm going to take back on e4, and then I'm going to take the pawn on b7, and our passed pawns are going to counterbalance each other. That's pretty reasonable. The position looks dynamically equal. I can see either side making a case for an advantage here. Both sides have chances. But I would take black. I like this bishop. I like the way this bishop is aiming at white's king, restricting the knight from coming to d4. The rook restricts the knight and stops it from coming to e5. I feel like this is a pretty pleasant position for Mr. Ferysev, for Mr. Serrana. Just a second. All right, so let's see. We have Serrana deep in thought here. Okay. So what's he going to do? Queen b6, maybe rook b2. This is really interesting. He goes queen b6, offering the queen trade. Hard to say whether white should accept it. He declines it. He goes back to a4. Let's click on some of the other top games. We have Ferysev against Matinyan. Matinyan is with the white pieces here. He's got, again, very active pieces. You can see that he's got a very aggressive style, and he often prioritizes piece activity over health of his pawn structure. You can see he's got a lot of weak pawns. He's got a weak pawn on b3, d2. So he's going to have to create concrete chances against black's king if he wants to justify his play. And f4 by Vladimir, that is a great move. Queen takes g7, a queen sacrifice. What a move. And after king f7, can he get to this bishop on e6? Okay, will he sack another exchange on e6? I'm skeptical. I don't feel like he's got enough here. He's got a piece for the queen right now. And I don't see this happening for white. Rook takes e6, king takes e6, and I don't think there's a discovery. I don't think there is a discovery here. I don't think there's a discovery. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. And neither does Matinyan. He's down to 26 seconds. I think Ferysev is going to win. It was a great concept, but it just wasn't quite sufficient. It wasn't wasn't what he wanted. And now Ferysev has a full queen for white's bishop. Rook takes c6, attempted by Matinyan, but I think king takes c6. And this is a complete paper tiger. White is going to run out of pieces well before he's able to create any chances. Back to Christopher Yu's game. Christopher's got a great position. He's got that pawn on a2. That is not an extra pawn, but it is a passed pawn. And black has 4 seconds. King of the nil struggling here to keep white's initiative at bay. But Christopher, he's down to 30 seconds. 94 was a great move. It defends the bishop, and it opens up a pathway for the queen. So it's a very heated struggle here as Christopher worms his knight into c6. Queen f6, though. And if you take on d6, you might be dropping the pawn on f2. This is... Okay, wait, but bishop takes d6, queen takes f2. There's knight e7 in the end, so I think black has to take on d6. He's gonna lose on time! He lost on time! He didn't find the move in time, and this is understandable. Tough position to defend, and we can see Ferysev here putting the finishing touches on his win over Nikita Matinyan, whose perfect score comes to an end. We have Grisha Kamsky. So Gato's reward for losing the previous game is now to play Alexander Grishuk. Welcome to Title Tuesday. Kamsky has a pretty solid endgame here, though. I think he might manage to draw out of this, though Grishuk trying to get his own knight to c4 and hit it where it hurts on b6. Okay, well, we've got one more perfect score game going as Alexei Sarana has managed to get the upper hand here against Murali, and he's got that passed a pawn. Now he's got the rook doubled on the second rank. Rook has to go back to f1. Pawn pushes to a2. This has to be losing, but how exactly does black make progress? Because if you go rook b1, you allow rook takes a2, so that's not possible. Alexei trying to gain some time here. It may be the case that black can't make progress. It may be the case that white just moves his rook back and forth down the a file, or maybe king g3 can be considered as well. And maybe, no, king g3, yeah, king g3 I think could be considered, as Alexei driving his pawn to h4. That could be an anchor square for a rook that comes to g3. Okay, he's going f5. He's trying to clear space up on the king side. Rook a5. And Grishuk did defeat Gata there, who's now lost 2 in a row. f5, but rook a6 check and rook a5. And f3 check by Alexei. What is he doing? King takes f3. Oh, now he goes rook b1. Rook takes a2, though. No, now rook takes f1. White had rook takes a2, and he was fine, and he mouse slips, but it doesn't matter because he was losing anyway. White had to find rook takes a2 in this position, and whichever rook black takes, white takes the other one. He panicked in time pressure. Did Murali and Alexei Sarana, one by hook or by crook, joins Big Fish, Ferysev, and Christopher Yu on 6 out of 6. Couple more games remaining. We have Jospim here, who's got 4 out of 5. He's still very much in contention. He's playing Jules Moussard, and he should be able to win this. He's got an exchange to the good. This should be a win for black. I mean, you could walk your king up and sacrifice on e7 if you want and get what should be a winning pawn endgame. Although it's never guaranteed. Those pawn endgames can be tricky. I think it's winning, though. I think if you take on e7 here, you should be able to drive this one home to victory. Okay, now he's got black, white, and Zugzwang. Rook g4, rook takes g5 is the simplest. And that was well done by Jose. For some reason, didn't take that bishop on g5, which was an easily winning pawn endgame. I'm not sure why he's procrastinating on that. He goes for f4, but I don't like this at all. He really bungled this, and he's still probably winning after bishop g5, rook takes... Okay, now he wins the pawn, he's winning. But he got that a little bit too close for comfort, but he's going to win. That is only one of 2 games left. The other one has Maxim Chigayev about to defeat Marco Riolani. He's going to move to 5 out of 6, so Maxim Chigayev also very much relevant. And let's watch Jospim putting the finishing touches on his game as he breaks down white's attempt at a fortress. There's got to be a way here to infiltrate, maybe get this king around. Even sacrificing the f4 pawn is a viable option for black, but he's still white's kicking. I mean, he's down a pawn and an exchange, and somehow Jospim is having a hard time finding the infiltration. I think he's doing the right thing, though, but here comes white's king. King d3, king b3, bishop f6. How exactly does he make progress? Bishop b5. This is amazing. White is holding on here as Jospim continues to try to find infiltration squares for his king. I think he's going to win this one way or another. King c2, now he's made progress in this way. He just needs to push white's king a little bit further, and then his king is going to find a sufficient entry point. King rook g2, so he's going to take on f4, but now black's king has made it to the back of white's pawns, which should be enough to win. Or is it f4? He's still surviving. He's going to go king f6. And now Jospim gets his rook there in time. He's going to get his king to g4. It still looks winning to me. What a weird game here as Jose is just not able to win this one. He should have given his rook up for White's bishop a long time ago. He wouldn't have had to do any of this. And I think rook takes f4 is winning. Rook takes f4 is winning. Rook takes f4 is an easy win. Jospem is missing one chance after another. He's playing way too fast. He's got to take those 15 seconds and actually think about how he wants to liquidate. He can play rook takes f4 in this position, and White's king is not in time. Let's see if he finds it now. Rook g4 and rook takes f4. And he finds it. There he is. And that's the win. King takes h4, king g3, and finally Jose gets to 5 out of 6 with a nice breakdown of White's fortress. That was pretty instructive. And that ends the games for this round. 163 moves. Jesus. What a long game as we take a look at our standings. We have 3 players with 6 out of 6. We've got David Paravian hot on their tail with 5.5 out of 6. And of course, a very big group going way down with 5 out of 6. So for Serana, Ferysev, and Christopher Yu, it's going to be very important to keep winning in order to keep their opposition distant. Okay, well, we have Christopher with the black pieces here. Alexei has white. This is the matchup of the round. This is round 7 of Title Tuesday, the late edition. I hope you're enjoying the tournament. It's been fun so far. A lot still left to be decided. Everything still left to be decided. And the second important matchup is Ferysev, who drops down to play drop stone, David Paravian. And that's a common situation. If there are 3 players with 6 out of 6, this is commonly misunderstood. What often happens is that the 2 of them who haven't played each other, or whose colors work out, they play each other, and then the other player with 6 drops down to play the highest rated player with the most number of points, which is, in this case, David Paravian, who is alone at 5.5 out of 6. And David Paravian, no slouch. This is not an easy pairing for Vladimir, who has gone for a very symmetrical kind of position. Now, can he grab this pawn on c6? It's up for grabs. He can take it, and he'll be up a pawn. But something is deterring him from doing that. I think he's also considering a simple development move, such as bishop e3. That might also be a good way to fight for a small advantage. Bishop takes c6 could allow bishop h3. Sometimes this can be a nasty idea. And White departs the fianchetto square, allowing an initiative. So Vladimir, yeah, he goes for queen d4. So he goes for a centralizing move. And I think he's trying to build a little battery here against the pawn on g7, trying to provoke black into playing f6, which, of course, as Ben Feingold could tell us, is a very weakening move. I like that move. Queen d4 is a hard move to face because this is a threat. This is still a threat. David has to be very careful here. White is more comfortable in this position because of his superior bishop placement and because his queen is in the center and black's is not. Let's go back here for a second to Christopher's game. This looks pretty symmetrical as well. I think Christopher has solved his opening problems, and what's more, he's got mate threatened on g2, and if Alexei goes f3, one of black's rooks could land on c8 and cause a lot of pressure down the c-file. I think, if anything, Alexei's the one who's got to be careful here as he goes e4, trying to plug that diagonal with his pawn. He doesn't want to play f3 and make more weaknesses. Okay. Let's see. e4, Christopher taking his time. Rook ac8 looks very natural here. And then Alexei will probably go rook c1. We might see rook fd8, rook d1. We often see that in these positions. Now, black has to be a little bit careful, though. What can happen is that black could get his queen trapped. There's this bishop b5 move, and all of a sudden, black's queen is out of squares, and Christopher would be forced to give up the exchange with queen takes c3 or queen takes b5. So a lot to be careful of for black as Christopher digging into his clock. He's got a minute and a half. He's going to have to be very careful. Alexei is particularly good at exploiting time pressure. h6, so Christopher going for a slow, flexible approach. He doesn't put a rook on c8, and my guess is that he is reserving this square for the queen in the event that Alexei plays bishop b5. But Alexei says, hey, you're not going to play rook c8. I'm still going to play rook c1. Buttressing the knight. Now the queen on c2 is free to roam about the cabin. Contents may have shifted. The queen's probably going to shift to e2, where it's doing a better job sort of controlling some of these more important points in the center. e4, it may be aiming together with a bishop at b5. All of a sudden, I think h6 was a little bit too slow. I think something about that move doesn't strike me as quite the right approach. Christopher, also with a minute on the clock, Alexei with 50-second time advantage. And now queen e2 looking really nice because that and queen b1, same exact idea, opening up an x-ray against black's queen. Christopher's going to have to move this queen, but where does he move it? If he moves it to d7, it could step from one x-ray into another one. If he moves it to e8, well, not only could it get trapped, but it's just incredibly passive. Somehow Alexei is doing such a nice job squeezing water from a stone. I think Christopher is in quite a bit of positional trouble here as clock dips down to 40 seconds. He doesn't seem to find a solution to his problems. Let's quickly dip to Feryshev's game. He has managed to win the pawn on c6, so David gave that pawn up in return for exchanging the queens. He's got drawing chances in this endgame, but with 30 seconds to Vladimir's minute and a half, I just don't see this happening for Paravian. He has a big task ahead of him, and Ferysev snatching another pawn on a7, counter-attacking the rook on b8. So if black takes on f1, white takes on b8, and even though there will be opposite-colored bishops with the presence of rooks, 2 pawns up is Vladimir Ferysev, and 18 seconds for Paravian. I think Ferysev is going to win this game and go to 7 out of 7, although Paravian saying, I'm not done yet. He gets his rooks to the second rank, but the simple bishop e4, which he just played, parries all of the threats. The other bishop could come down to e3, no, but this trade is good for white. Take on b6, go rook d1, force the rook trade, and Feryshev's 2 pass pawns on the queen side should decide the game in his favor. Let's go back and trust Ferysev to convert this. Let's go back to Christopher's game. He did bite the bullet. He did put his queen on e8. He didn't find any other squares. Let's see what Alexei Sarana can do to keep this pressure going. a6 has just been played by Christopher. He says, get out of there. He wants a little breathing room for his knight. I think he's going to go b5 and then try to reactivate his knight either through b6 or through f6, one way or another. His pieces are all clumped together in the center. They're really passive, and white threatens the move bishop c7, dislodging the rook from d8, and that's a disaster because that knight on... Oh, look at that move by Alexei. Knight takes b5. He says, no, I'm not moving my bishop, and now bishop c7 looks really strong, but Christopher creating counterplay. Bishop takes e4. Alexei is going to calmly move his queen away, and how is black going to stop his entire d-file from collapsing? Because if white takes the rook, then the knight is going to lose its defender, and potentially black stands to lose an entire exchange here. But currently Christopher is up a piece. Queen g6, nice move. He threatens checkmate. Now will Alexei take on d5 and then take on d8 and then take on d5 with his queen? What's going to be the material count at the end of this? This is exciting. Queen f7, Christopher offering the queen trade. Now we might get a situation where Alexei trades everything and Christopher's going to be up a piece for only 2 pawns. Is Christopher getting out of this not just in one piece? Is Alexei getting out of this in one piece? Queen takes f7, king takes f7, and that rook on d8, notice how it defends the knight on d7. And yeah, black's pieces are clumped together, but that's actually a good thing. And queen c6 is a clear sign that Alexei doesn't have a move in mind. Christopher should have moved the knight there. He moves his king instead, gets it to safety. If he moves the rook, he drops the knight, so this is correct. Alexei probably has to take this rook at some point. He's delaying it, trying to complicate the game. Christopher with only 4.8 seconds, but that is plenty of time for the youngster from California. And Ferysev, as we predicted, he did convert that endgame. So this is the top game that we have our eyes on. Rook e1, Alexei trying to create threats, and Christopher doesn't see a move. Knight g8, knight g8, he had to go knight g8. Rook takes c7 now. Oh, and this is even better. Bishop c5 on the queen, or did it? No, there was queen takes c5. Oh my god, amazing tactics. Queen g6, he made it happen. Rook d2, bishop f1. And I think Alexei's going to win. He's won the piece back. He's up 2 pawns, but Christopher's got attacking chances against white's king. He's barely making these moves happen in time, but how does he actually get anything done? White's going to eventually start pushing these pawns. Christopher making his moves with literally no time left on the clock. h5, he's doing what he can. h4, pushing his pawn down to h3. He's going to create weaknesses, but Alexei can go g3. He simply takes on h3. I don't see a move. Queen back to g3. At any moment, he plays it. Now keep pushing the pawns. h4, creating an anchor point on g5 for the queen, where he puts it now. It's over. Christopher loses on time, but the game is over. There was an amazing moment there where it looked like Christopher could win the queen. I got excited. Bishop c5 check. It's the discovery. But no, after queen takes c5, black's queen is pinned. And rook takes c5, bishop takes f7 is obviously winning for white. An amazing game by Alexei. It looked at one point like he was losing control, but all of a sudden, with those incredible moves, he put Christopher under pressure, and he didn't manage to solve his problems in time pressure. Okay, this one's a draw. We've got Murali, who lost that previous game, trying to rebound against none other than Sasha Grishuk and doing a great job of it. This should be a win for white. He's got 2-on-1 on the king side, but Grishuk trying to create counterplay with his rooks and his pass pawn c4. Will there be a ladder made? g5, whose pawn is going to be first? Rook g2, though, looked really good there for white. Murali pushing his pawn to g6. Rook c5, oh, he wins the pawn. Is this an easy win? Black trying to get his king. No, rook f4. Rook f4, and the game is over. He missed it. Oh my god, he had rook f4. And Murali in time pressure missing it, and this actually is possibly, oh my god, and rook h6, Grishuk wins the pawn. What a choke for Murali. And earlier, he won improbably. Now he draws improbably. He had rook f4 check. You gotta see that. Rook f4 check, forcing Grishuk to step back, and the pawn defends the other one just in time. He would have won the game. He would have had 6 out of 7. Now he's got 5.5. 2 games remaining. One of them is a queen versus knight endgame. That's a good one to know how to win. And that's not always the easiest one. You got to be very careful to sidestep forks and get that knight in Zugzwang. Vitic, strong FIDE master, doing a great job of converting this. He's going to deliver checkmate on g6. And our last remaining game is another queen up. And, oh, he's got no time, though, does Quattro Princess. Doesn't seem to have the best connection, but can he make the ladder mate happen in time? He can. Okay, that concludes the games from round 7. We've got 4 big rounds to go, and we have a clear leader, Alexei Sarana, who defeated Christopher Yu, and Vladimir Ferysev, who defeated David Paravian, are 2 leaders on 7 out of 7. What an incredible run they both have had. A pretty hefty group with 6 out of 7 that includes a resurgent Vladislav Artemiev, who lost that second round shockingly and has rebounded to win the rest of his games. They are, they're smelling blood the moment Alexei or Vladimir lose. They are going to be hounded by that big peloton, by that big pack of players with 6 out of 7. And so we've got the matchup of the Titans. We have Ferysev finally facing off against Alexei Sarana. They haven't played yet. They both have 7 out of 7. We're going to concentrate on this game, and we're also going to keep an eye on the game between Badur Jabava and Vladislav Artemiev, who are both so interesting to watch, and both of whom try to continue their comeback. Okay, but let's begin on our top board. Sarana with white, Ferysev with black, a Grunfeld here. And wait a minute. Now, white is just taken on e5. Currently, Alexei's up a pawn, and he can support it with f4. Look at the time disparity. It looks like Alexei's still in his preparation while Vladimir is improvising. Okay. Now, will Alexei support the pawn? What is the hesitation? I think the hesitation is the move rook d8. Now, watch this. See the pin, and if white goes queen c2, whoop, c4. Where's that bishop going? Absolutely nowhere. And so Alexei, they're going down that line. But instead of queen c2, he goes c4, stopping black's pawn from coming to c4. Now he goes queen c2. This is amazing for Sarana, but b5, maybe Vladimir can create chances on the queen side. Maybe b5 actually gives black a lot of counterplay. This is very much in Vladimir's style. I think he's going to play b5. You could also go queen d7 here and directly attack this bishop. And I think there are some tactics there which might allow black to win the pawn back. Let's see what he does, and then we'll talk about it. Queen d7 or b5 are my predictions here. Anything else? Knight c6 and knight b4. He goes queen d7. And after rook d1, there is knight takes c4. How does that work? Well, let's look at it really quickly while Alexei is thinking. Bishop takes c4. Looks like black's blundered a bishop. Is the move bishop takes c4? No, that blunders the queen. No, first you take the rook. You trade everything on d1, and now the bishop on c4 has lost its defender. Now, white is still up a pawn here, but black could recapture on a2 or get that rook into d8. And this is exactly what's happening. He's taken on c4. And I changed my mind. At first, I thought white center looked massive, but due to this queenside counterplay, due to these tactics, it looks like Vladimir actually reclaims the initiative. This is a position right up his alley. Even though he spent more time, it looks like he has a little bit more to show for his time investment. Now, bishop takes c5 here. Could Alexei consider taking that pawn, snatching it up greedily? Well, then queen b5 looks really scary. I don't like the look of this for white. Remember, white isn't castled yet. The king is wide open on e1. And when you play the move f4, you weaken a lot of things, including that bishop on e3. Alexei now taking his time, trying to figure out how to survive this. Ferysev just seems so inspired. He's so sharp tactically. The idea that he found with Gata, that wasn't a coincidence. He might have gotten lucky once, but he's showing why he's always atop the Title Tuesday standings. I think barring something crazy, this is up Ferisev's alley. I feel like he has a good shot at winning this game, but it's too early to tell. Okay. Off we go quickly to our second board. Jabava with white against Artemiev. All right, so this is an Italian and a pretty unusual one. Artemiev has a rook on g4. He's just gone queen f8, threatening to snatch up Jabava's bishop on f4 due to the pin. But Badur, he's got a nice little situation going. Wait a second. Queen takes f4? What is his idea? Whoa! Jabava blundered a piece! How did he miss that? He didn't understand what Artemiev was doing. He didn't ask himself what black wanted, and he blunders a full piece, and rook f3 is a paper tiger. Queen h6, Checkmate? No, there's a bishop on e7. Maybe he missed the bishop? I don't think so. I think he just blundered a piece, and he might resign here. What an uncharacteristic blunder by Bahadur. He's going to be incredibly angry at that because he was in a pretty good spot in the tournament despite losing to Gata. Artemiev is going to win this up a full piece, no compensation. Artemiev could drop the queen back to e5. He can go bishop f5. This is not something you see every day. Plenty of time on the clock. Vladislav is going to win this one and go to 7 out of 8. And he's probably going to face the winner of Sorana Ferysev. On board 3, we've got Parham, who is facing off against Christopher, and Christopher with a rough stretch here. Parham, look at the attack that he's unwound here. Knight takes g6, and now rook takes... Oh, but Christopher with a brilliant resource, and it's not going to work. Queen takes f8, wins the game. Queen takes f8 by Parham, wins a piece, I think. No, he plays rook takes g5. Wait, but h takes g6? He wants bishop g3. He attacks Christopher from all sides. And the point, Christopher's point, is that rook takes g6 actually loses because in the end, black pins white's queen, but Parham sees it. He sees everything. He goes rook g3, bishop g3, and now don't play knight takes f4. That drops the queen. Christopher trying his best to mix things up. Now, wait a second. Is this actually good for white? I don't think it is. I think Parham blundered. You can't take with a knight. If you take with a pawn, then Christopher can take on g6 and he's up in exchange. Does Parham have queen takes g7 check here? King takes g7 and then knight takes f4 check? He might have to go for that. But if anything, I think black is in the driver's seat and he does go for that. Knight takes f8 and bishop takes f4. Black now has a queen against 2 pieces. Parham was easily winning there if he took the rook. He overdid it. And now Parham's only big chance here is this d-pawn. Can he push it all the way up as far as it'll go? If you go d5, though, you give up the pawn on c3. Probably not worth it. I would make a move like king g2 or king f2, and he does, and try to keep these pieces on solid ground. You do not want to move the rook or the bishop to an undefended square. Now, Jabava trying to create counterplay, but he fails. And Ferysev, he did manage to win that endgame. Yeah, and he won it very, very convincingly. That did not take him a long time. He simply won Alexei's piece. Exactly the line that we predicted it. And rook a8, rook takes a2, bishop b3, rook c2, and he won Alexei's bishop. Press that button. That was easy. Ferysev on 8 out of 8. He's probably going to face Vladislav Artemiev. That will be the ultimate test. Back we go to Parham's game. He's gotten his pawn all the way to d6, which is a huge account. Now d7. Does he have d7? d7, queen takes d7, and then rook h8 and rook h7. I think d7 might be very nasty for black. Can he play it? He does. Queen e7 check, and Christopher again. He's getting killed on the clock. He's got no time. He's losing on time. And he's lost on time. And he's losing on the position as well because he loses the queen by force. A very disappointing result for Christopher, who loses 2 in a row. And we're watching here as Artemiev is putting the finishing touches. Now this is Sag. He took a bishop on f4 using a rook pin. Now he takes a bishop on e4 using the other rook spin. That irony is not going to be lost on Bahadur. Now Jaspem, let's not forget about him. He's got 6 out of 7. He struggled to win that fortress, but he is crushing Conrad Holt. This isn't even close. He's up a piece and a gazillion pawns. I don't know why Conrad is playing, and he loses on time. A couple of other top games still going as Dimitri Andreikin. He was nicked for a full point and then for half a point, and he is playing Murali. A draw would be a disastrous result for both players here. Neither one can afford to drop another half point. And Andreikin, if anything, has the winning chances here. But he's going to have connected passers, but he is a very passive king. And black is an ideally placed rook. So what Andreikin is saying is he's giving up the a4 pawn in order to push his kingside passers as far as they'll go. But they're not going far because black's king is very well placed to stop the move g5. And if anything, white has to be very careful. b4, king h4, rook a1. But here go white pawns. King g5, rook a5 check would force the white king back. I think this is probably a draw objectively, but practically in time pressure, anything can happen. Okay, we've got a couple of other games still going. We've got Bluebaum about to make a draw, and that's not a good result for either of them as they move to 6 out of 8. Okay, so what is Andreikin doing here? Will he take on e4 and allow king g5? This, to me, looks like liquidation and a draw. Unfortunate here for both of these players who slide further back in the tournament standings. Title Tuesday, it's a brutal tournament. 6 out of 8, a great result in the vast majority of tournaments. But if you want to win Title Tuesday, every half point is absolutely golden. And a repetition of moves is inevitable. King f4, Murali going for it. Now, wait a minute. Oh, e4 check. That is a lucky move there because rook b8 allowed rook takes b4 check. He was playing with fire. There was Murali, and this is going to be a draw. We don't have to watch the rest of this game. Another draw in Lazovic against Hakobian. A lot of draws here at the top. And again, that is good for only one person, and that is Vladimir Ferysev. And perhaps Artemiev is Elham, another player who has had himself a pretty good tournament. He's on 6 out of 8. And for Elham, FIDE Master from Norway, very impressive blitz player. That's a great score. We're watching as JC Ibarra, who he won an early game against somebody very good. I forget who it was. He upset somebody. But he has slid off the ledge completely ever since then. He's got 4 out of 7. He has not managed to keep his foot on the gas pedal at all. And this game looks like it might end in a draw as well, because the problem here is that you cannot do anything with Black's king. It's on a dark square, it's on a light square, and White has a dark squared bishop. So the only chance for Ibarra is to either win on time or somehow break through, which is what he's trying to do. But can he? Oh, bishop c5. Bishop c5 won on the spot. Bishop c5 dislodged Black's bishop from f8. And bishop d6 there was winning. This is also winning. He makes it happen. A nice honor goal there for Ibarra, but he is nowhere near the top of the tournament standings. And our last game of the round is between an international master and a FIDE master. This should be an easy draw as well. Black's pawn is going this way. It is nowhere near promotion, and White has it safely restrained. And so we can draw some conclusions. There will be a 5 or 6 minute break after this round for another fair play check and for another break to these hardworking Title Tuesday players. We will draw our conclusions here going into the home stretch. 3 more rounds. 3 more big rounds, and nothing has been decided because we have one player with a perfect score, and that player is going to be facing the bloodthirsty Vladislav Artemiev, would be my guess, although he might be playing somebody else with 7 out of 8. There's quite a couple of people with 7 out of 8, but generally speaking, if you have 8 out of 8, you drop down to face the highest rated player with the most number of points after you, which in this case is Vladislav Artemiev. This game has ended in a draw. That concludes the games for this round. Let's update and take a look at the standings. And here you have it. We have Ferysev with 8 out of 8. Incredible performance by Vladimir. Closely followed by Serrana, whom he just defeated. Jose Jospin at 7 out of 8. Sib Elephant, that's Artemiev, and Parham, who defeated Christopher Yu by hook or by crook. One way or another, he made that happen. He's on 7 out of 8. 6.5. Paravian all alone, and then obviously a massive group with 6 out of 8 who are just out of contention for the time being. Will Vladimir Ferysev keep his incredible streak going, or will Artemiev or whoever he faces nick Ferysev for a full point and throw this tournament into disarray? That remains to be seen. But first, a quick break. Don't go anywhere. The most exciting part, the last 3 rounds of Title Tuesday, will be waiting for you on the other side of this break in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned. Okay, back we are at the late titled Tuesday. And what a title Tuesday it is. It's been a very, very, very competitive one as we have Vladimir Ferysev mounting, putting together a perfect score. He's got 8 out of 8 and counting and counting. But he will have a very, very difficult challenge here as he faces off. Indeed, I was right. He is playing Vladislav Artemiev. And let me just pull up the standings here. Okay, just a moment here. I realize the standings. There we go. All right, let me just shift over the standings here, and we are off. All right. Display the scores. Okay, now we're good. And let's see. So we have a Alpin Sicilian by Mr. Artemiev and Ferysev. You can tell, well, knight f3, a6. Actually, this was a very strange move order. Vladimir played a6 move 1 and then followed up with c5, transposing into an Alpin Sicilian. Now, you can tell that Ferysev is playing to win. He is not playing a Berlin. He's not playing a Queen's Gambit declined. No. He is playing... he's playing like the sharpest, most dangerous, dubious Sicilian. He wants to win this game and wrap this tournament up without delay. Okay, well, let's see if that strategy works. That is admirable indeed. And only Ferysev, I think, is this brave. All right. So bishop to d7. Now, in general, in these types of positions, and I have turned on the eval bar, by the way, so I know you guys like the eval bar. Turned it on. In general, these positions are worse for black. There's no question that black is worse objectively because white's got full control of the center, d4 and e4, and now Artemiev pushing his pawn to d5. That's a pretty committal decision. So this closes the center down, but it grabs more space. And Ferysev is going to have a hard time completing his development because look at this bishop on d7. It's preventing the knight from developing to d7 itself. And that knight has no other development squares. And if black goes knight f6, he's going to have to reckon with an eventual e5. And so Ferysev, he tries to solve that problem by trading bishops. And here Vladislav could go c4. And Ferysev is just going to go back to d7. And his idea is to open up a diagonal for his other bishop, which is currently just biting on granite, staring at the pawn on c3, which is very undesirable in this kind of position. When you have a fianchettoed bishop, you want it to be good. And Artemiev obliges, but he's got so many tempi. Now, rook e1 could be considered in order to meet knight f6 with e5. I really dislike Feryshev's position here. First of all, Vladimir, he's going to have to develop his king side. That's black's most pressing priority, and Artemiev is taking all of the time that he has here to grab more space on the queen side. a4 to prevent black from breaking free with b5. He might even push this pawn to a5. Ferysev says, no, you're not. He goes a5 himself. That opens up a pathway for his knight to develop itself to a6. I really like the move a5, and Artemiev doing his best to keep the center open. En passant, bishop takes c6. Now there's a weak square on d5, and white immediately sending his knight there. Knight coming to c3, and then either to b5 or to d5. And if it goes to b5, that bishop could come out to f4 and put tremendous pressure on the d6 pawn. I still think white's quite a bit better, but Artemiev's clock is starting to dwindle. He's below a minute, and Ferysev has played in very dubious, very sort of suspicious fashion, but he's played pretty quickly. He has over half of his time left, and knight comes out to a3. So he is not going to d5. That much is clear. He is going directly to b5. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Knight is coming to b5. Ferysev bringing the reinforcements in, making sure that the d6 pawn is as well defended as it can be. Queen back to b8, and will Artemiev get his bishop out to f4 and sacrifice the pawn on b2? I think he will. I don't think he's worried about Ferysev grabbing that pawn on b2. For Ferysev, the priority is absolutely, can he get that knight out? Can he get castled? Because if the center opens up and Vladimir's king is stuck in the center, well, there will be hell to pay. That will not be pleasant. But 30 seconds for Artemiev, he's not finding a way to break through. And you don't want to be in this kind of time pressure against Ferysev. We know how tricky he is. Rook b1. I think Artemiev preparing to play b3 and bishop b2, and he does. And Ferysev has managed to castle. That's a big accomplishment for black. We know he's not going to get mated now, but Artemiev has also gotten his bishop to b2 in order to nullify the effects of black's bishop. But somehow this just isn't quite as good as I thought it would be. And now 20 seconds. Artemiev is down to 20 seconds, and he's just not seeing a way to continue. Maybe move the knight back and try to go f4. This knight on e5 is a monster. And for another time being, I think Ferysev has everything more or less under control. You see the eval bar showing a sizable advantage for white, but that advantage has not ticked up in a long time, whereas white's clock has ticked down considerably. Rook b2, that's a great move by Artemiev. He's trying to get his rook to d2 and load up the bazooka on the pawn on d6, but Ferysev goes f5 just at the right moment, creating complications. 10 seconds in a position this complicated for Vladislav Artemiev. He's going rook d2. He continues to insist on his plan, and the f-file opens up. Knight takes c5 is important here, I think. You can't play rook takes c4 there. He takes on f5. The eval bar didn't like that move, and it's because of de. And now look at this monster square on d4 that Ferysev now has for his knight. He can go knight d4 here. He can delay that move. That d4 square is a massive outpost, but he sacrificed the pawn on a5. Artemiev says, I'm taking that. He's got 4.6 seconds. I just don't see Artemiev surviving this for the duration of this entire middle game. He has who knows how many moves to make. And Ferysev, he's so good at creating more complications. Now bishop b6 goes Artemiev attacking c5. Queen c8 will meet with knight a7, dislodging the queen from the pawn. Wait, knight a7. And he finds it. He finds it instantly. And Ferysev might have missed that. He's going to lose a second pawn. Oh no, that was a big mistake by Vladimir. He probably had to defend that with his rook. Bishop takes c5. No, he doesn't take it. He goes a5. Artemiev didn't like something about bishop takes c5. I have no idea what it is. And now Ferysev defend. Knight f3 check. Knight f3 check would win the exchange. Knight f3 check wins the exchange, but it's not over yet. Artemiev calmly accepts that, and then he takes on c5. Remember, white is now 2 pawns for the exchange, and white has a big pawn advantage on the queen side. And white's kingside pawns are not bad. They're actually slowing down black's pawns, and now knight d6. I actually think Artemiev has the upper hand here, but 2.9 seconds. He goes c5, though. Look at how his pieces are streaming in. If he can get to this pawn on b7, he's going to be winning. He's going to have 2 passers, and he traps Feryshev's rook. The rook has nowhere to go. I think Artemiev's going to manage to pull this one off. Rook d7. Ferysev tries to give the rook up on his terms. Rook takes b3. Still chances for black. Bishop b6. What a move by Artemiev, and he is ready to push that a-pawn. Ferysev says, not on my wedge, but knight d8. Now he's ready to push the c-pawn, and he does. Bishop takes h3. Ferysev taking what he can get. c7. Artemiev knocking on the door, and the knight rerouting to a7. He's going to push that bishop off the ledge, promote, and he's going to be up a full piece. Artemiev is going to win this game. What an incredible sequence there, as he had 3 seconds entering that middle game to Feryshev's minute. And Artemiev is going to take this one. a6. What an elegant finish. a7. The pawn is unstoppable, and Ferysev is going to resign the game. And Vladislav Artemiev, that's who it took to stop Feryshev's furious win streak. Now all of them are on 8 out of 9, and so is Parham, who won his game. There's 3 players with 8 out of 9, and there might even be 4 if Chesscom wins. But Chesscom, it doesn't look like, has any significant winning chances. He has the upper hand here. He's got the extra pawn, but look at the fortress that Paravian has built up. He's got full control over the g6 square. Why is that important? That's important because white will never be able to push this pawn past g5, ever. White doesn't have a light squared bishop. That's the problem with opposite colored bishops. It's that when the opposing side has a blockade, there's just nothing that you can do. You can check the king, but you can't get this bishop off of this diagonal. If anything, Chesscom has to be a little bit careful not to blunder his rook. Every time he puts the rook on a light square, he risks walking into a fork. For Paravian, he's got more active pieces, and Chesscom's shuffling back and forth. Plenty of time for David. This is going to be a draw, and that is not a desirable result. Again, really for either of them, Chesscom was hoping to win and join that group of leaders with 8 out of 9. So it looks like there will be 3 players with 8 out of 9. So 1 out of 2 games remaining. Let's finish this one. I think a draw offer is going to be forthcoming at some point by Jose, who himself has 2 seconds and has to be careful. Anything can happen when you've got 1 second on your clock, unless apparently your name is Vladislav Artemiev. That was incredible. Oh my God, there was a blunder. He could have played bishop f7. Can you believe that? And Jose, just offer a draw, man. Just offer a draw, man. Paravian missing a fork there. And it's understandable, too. Actually, not that understandable. Paravian had over 10 seconds. There's no need to pre-move here. There's absolutely no need to pre-move. That's exactly what he should have been waiting for. And as an experienced player, David should have seen that. He could have won the game. He would have been 7.5 out of 9. As it stands, it's going to be a draw. I'm waiting for a draw offer by one of them. It's rook and bishop against rook and bishop. It's as drawn as it gets. Both of them, I don't know who's playing for a win, who's the one not offering a draw. I don't think there's been a draw offer yet. There hasn't been. And if anything, I'm concerned for Jose. He just seems to be a little discombobulated here throughout this entire endgame. And I mean, he's cutting it pretty close here, but it should be a draw. Rook b4 and king d3 now. Just as long as neither side blunders their rook or misses a fork, this should be over, maybe by the 50 move rule. Who knows? I guess both of them don't want to draw. David is going to be kicking himself when he figures out his friends are probably writing on Facebook, David, you missed bishop c2. You could have won a rook. No feeling is worse than that. Now, a reminder that tiebreakers do apply in this tournament, but prizes are not meted out based on tiebreakers. They are shared. So 2 players have 9.5 out of 11, and 1 player has much better tiebreaks. That does not matter for the prizes. It matters for the formal tournament standings, but not for the prizes. Prizes are shared, which I think is very fair. King d6, and once again, now white getting it close yet again. 2 seconds, king f2. We're approaching the 50 move rule, I would say. Probably somewhere close, and I would imagine that a rook trade is on the cards here, and there we finally have a rook trade and a draw bishop against bishop. We've had a lot of long games in this title Tuesday, 146 moves, and now the all-important round 10 out of 11. We've got 2 rounds left, and everything is yet to be decided. As we look here at the standings, you can see Vladimir Ferysev in first place, and you can see that he's got the best tiebreaks of everybody with 45, but Parham and Artemiev resurgent. Both of them have 8 out of 9. This is not what Vladimir was hoping for. He was hoping to win his game, and he would have had 9 out of 9. He would have been running away with it. Now it's anyone's tournament, and don't count out Jospem. He's got 7.5 out of 9. He can sneak in there with a well-timed win. We've got Artemiev playing Parham in this round, and then we have Ferysev dropping down to face Jospem. And for Jospem, that is a must-win game. If Jospem manages to win, he knocks out Ferysev. And if this game ends in a draw, that is Jospem's path to sharing first place going into the last round. Let's see what happens. We're going to simultaneously keep an eye on 2 of these games. This one, Artemiev against Parham, and Ferysev against Jose, who are locked in a rouser Sicilian. Ferysev has the white pieces here. And already I'm not a huge fan of the way that he has handled the opening. Look at how Jospem already is threatening to play b4. This feels like Ferysev mixed something up. He's nowhere near getting his kingside attack started, and black is already ready to play b4 and tear white apart on the queen side. Jose has a great position out of the opening, a lot more time, and is Vladimir a little bit tilted, a little bit disconcerted after losing that to Artemiev in the last round? I can guarantee you when Vladislav had 2 seconds in that middle game, Ferysev was already imagining the 9 out of 9 written on the scoreboard, but it was not meant to be. Ferysev loses, and Artemiev is a freaking genius. Let's see. Knight a2. Knight a2, and that is not a move you play if you're happy with your position. Now, white is not lost by any means, but Ferysev doing whatever he can to prevent b4, which, by the way, is still possible. You can still try to play b4 here and sacrifice the pawn in order to open the b file. Now, the big question here for black, and I was about to say, is he going to castle kingside? And he does. Okay. Now for Vladimir Ferysev, how does he get the kingside attack going? Because if Ferysev does nothing on the king side, if he doesn't play g4 quickly, black is going to have a free hand on the queen side, and one way or another, Jospem is going to get things going on that queen side. But Ferysev, he continues to play prophylactically. Right now, his main project is to prevent b4 at all costs, and that's understandable. If I'm in his shoes, though, and there we go, I'm saying I'm going g4 and getting the engine running on the king side to at least mix this up a little bit. Back we go to Artemiev's game, and look at the time situation. Is Vladislav doing this deliberately? He's pulling a Grishuk. He's got a minute after 13 moves in a blitz game. And Parham, almost with all of his time still remaining, and I don't think Artemiev has anything to show for it. This is a completely equal position. No advantage for either side, no weaknesses in either of their positions. That knight on a4 is both good and bad. It's good in the sense that it pressures the c5 pawn, but it's bad in the sense that it has no way back and it's kind of stuck there. So, you know, it's kind of stranded on an island. You know, you kind of want to get back at some point, but I guess it can go back through b2, but there's no need. That knight on a4 is just chilling. It's defended. And Parham, changing the structure up, he decides to release the tension with c takes d4, Artemiev recapturing with the bishop, And now for Vladislav, I think both sides are going to take a little time to position their rooks on ideal squares and maybe improve their position, make some architectural improvements, surface level improvements such as a5, h6. Black should probably take a moment to create some luft just for the future. And Vladislav going e4, signaling his intentions, grabbing space in the center. These are the kinds of positions that Artemiev plays best. They're quiet, they're maneuvering heavy, and he just has such a great feel for how to manufacture advantages out of these positions. And Parham taking a little bit of time trying to decide how to position his pieces. I would probably play a5 if I were him, just to make sure that the b4 pawn doesn't dangle in some of these lines, but he chooses knight c5. So he offers a trade of knights, and after knight c5, dc, Black's pawns visit the orthodontist and fully correct themselves. Then the rook is going to shift to d8. I don't think Artemiev's taking. I think Vladislav is probably going to be inclined to play knight b2, but then Black could consider going e5 and chasing this bishop away, and bishop b3 would run into knight takes e4. So a big decision for Artemiev, and I don't see anything overly appealing as he acquiesces to knight takes c5, but didn't do so voluntarily. He took a while there, 24 seconds. If anything, I'm probably taking Parham here. This is still probably about equal. Now, the big question is who's going to get control of that d file, or are they going to be locked in a struggle for the d file? Rook d8 here looks very appealing for Black. No, Parham takes en passant. What a committal decision. So he accepts that now the pawn on a5 is going to be a weakness, but now White redirects the rooks to the queen side, and look at knight b8, getting this knight around to c6, where it defends a5 and aims for d4. Artemiev going e5, grabbing more space. By the way, quickly, in the Ferysev Chesscom game, things are starting to heat up as Ferysev has managed to get his pawn to g5, and finally he's created chances on the queen side, on the king side. On the queen side, Chesscom still hasn't found a way to push that pawn through to b4. Ferysev is defending it with everything that he's got. We're going to keep an eye on this game as well, but 5 seconds for Parham. This is ultimate peak entertainment. This is a decisive game. Round 10 of Title Tuesday. Who will take this one? Will Artemiev do what he did in the previous round? Look at the time disparity, but I like White's position all of a sudden. I didn't like the decision by Parham to take en passant because now he's saddled with this weakness on a5. On the other hand, White also has a weakness on b3, and that rook on a3 is kind of tied down to it. So one could argue that the weaknesses balance themselves out, but White also has a little bit more space. White has a little bit more space. Rook back to a2. Are we going to see a repetition of moves? I don't think Parham minds that. I wouldn't mind a draw if I were Black, unless he's looking at White's clock and saying, no, I want to win. Artemiev again getting his rook to d1. We've seen this one before, deja vu. And are they going for a repetition of moves? Will Parham decline it? Parham might actually play. I don't know if I'd be able to resist playing with 1 second on my opponent's clock, but we know what Artemiev is capable of no matter how much time or how little time he has on his clock. Knight d2. He goes back with his knight in order to support the b3 pawn even further. Right now, neither side is making any noticeable progress. They're shifting their bishop and the rook around. Queen d7 by Parham, getting the queen to an open file. 1 second there as Artemiev making space for his knight to come to e4, but 0.9 seconds. Can he make it? Rook d1, getting his rook now. Now his knight is coming into d6. Parham intercepts it. c5 intercepting the bishop. Now he gives him the d5 square, though. Knight to d6. Takes as possible. But in the end of the day, Artemiev is going to be the one with a massive passed pawn on c5. Is he getting the upper hand here? This would be incredible. Parham is going to be up a pawn. But look at this monster pawn on c5. And in addition, White's taking this pawn on d4. That pawn is indefensible. White is better here. This is insane. Artemiev has emerged in the endgame with an advantage. And I think he's got serious winning chances. They're in a time scramble as well. I don't know what to watch. Ferysev with White here against Jose, who goes bishop a5. I like Jose's position from a time scramble standpoint, but here goes Ferysev with d5, rook c3. Whose king is going to be caught on the crossfire? Chesscom doing everything he can. Rook c1, queen g1 is a huge threat. Oh, Ferysev allowing Black's rooks to stream in, but what's the follow-up? The king just chills on h3, and now d takes e6. Now Ferysev opens up the files, and h5 there looked really good. Now rook g8, Chesscom redirects pieces to the defense. We've got Artemiev with an extra piece here. I think he's going to win, but let's watch this game because this is ultimate entertainment. Rook d7, g7 wins the queen. No, that was not good. That gives Black a new lease on life. Now Black's got serious drawing chances, but with 3 seconds left, I don't know if he's going to make it happen, but bishop e3. Look at Chesscom attacking White's weaknesses, getting this king to h6. Ferysev panicked there a little bit. And Chesscom getting his king to g4. He's currently down 2 pawns, but he's got such incredible piece activity. White could also get mated here. Bishop c5 stopping the pawn. He does. White is up a pawn, technically, but White's king, oh, he's going to get it through to h5 to g6. Chesscom with 1 second there. He's trying to mate white. Rook g2 and Ferysev. I think rook e1 might have been winning there. Ferysev trying to get his king to safety, and he manages. He's gotten his king to f6. Now he's ready to play e7. Is Ferysev going to pull this one out? Jasper mouse slips. It was already lost, though. He couldn't stop the pawn, and Ferysev is going to win. Unbelievable, and they're still playing. Oh, and Artemiev is going to win. He's got knight and 2 against knight rook and 2 versus king rook and 2. This is over. And rook b6. What an absolute monster. He forces the rook trade. Tactically, he's got one pawn left. Parham is not going to approach it. This one's over. Artemiev wins another one. He is insane. Are you kidding me? Vladislav Artemiev wins the game, as does Ferysev. Both of them are a 9 out of 10. But remember, they have played each other, which means that they are both going to drop down and face players who have 8 out of 10. So let's have a look at our standings. Who are they going to face in this last round of the late titled Tuesday? This is maximum action. And let's have a look here. We've got Ferysev and Artemiev. Then we have Parham, Aram Hakobian. He might play one of them. Castor, that's Rodrigo Vasquez, a very strong grandmaster from Chile. He's a great blitz player. And Vlad Dobrov, who climbed all the way up. He was not at the top of the standings, but he managed to win a couple of key games, and he's up there with 8 out of 10. Now, somebody with 8 out of 10 could conceivably tie for first place. If both Artemiev and Ferysev lose, then those with 8 out of 10 could climb up and have a share of first place. Something tells me that's not going to happen. Now, the key question to me is, and there's one more game left, by the way, and that's a rook and bishop versus rook, so that's going to last a while and enough time for me to conclude here as we wait the final round. Essentially, the key question is going to be, will Ferysev or Artemiev offer a draw? Will one of them be satisfied with a draw? I think the answer is no, because neither of them are guaranteed first place with a draw. If one of them makes a draw and the other one wins, then obviously that other one gets first place. And by the way, Santo Blue, that's Vahap Sanal, doing a great job holding this endgame against Andreykin, who, if he wins, gets to 8 out of 10 as well. So if Andreykin wins this game, I feel like one of them is going to face Dimitri Andreykin, and that would be big. But right now, Vahap Sanal is doing a fantastic job confidently defending rook and bishop versus rook. Stib Elephant is Artemiev, and we are going to keep an eye on both Artemiev and Ferysev in the last round. And did he get mated? He got mated. That's it, rook e7. Goodbye, rook a7 unstoppable, just as I said. And just as I complimented Vahap on his defensive skill, he blunders into mate. And Andreykin, Dima Andreykin, fresh off a great performance at the RCC, didn't manage to win, but he got second. He will be facing, I think, one of the two top guys. Here we go. And take a drink of water here, because I can sense this is going to be edge of your seat entertainment. We've got Andreykin, as I said, Andreykin playing Artemiev. That is a brutal pairing for Vladislav Artemiev, who otherwise would have faced someone a little bit more manageable. He's got Andreykin with black now. Something tells me Artemiev is going to be solid, and he's going to take the chances that he can get. You can see what Feryshev's intentions are. He plays the knight off, one of the most combative openings in chess. But Vasquez, he is a very, very good tactical player. I've played him many, many times. He's very experienced, and he is no joke. Now, Ferysev getting his knight around to c5. Not worrying about his development. There goes the f-pawn. f4 and f5 is White's typical idea here, trying to carve out that d5 square for the knight. Instead, he goes g5. White is going to follow through with f5, and Ferysev, he better get started on queenside play. No, he castles queenside. He gets his king out of dodge, and the king is going to be as safe on b8 as it gets in these types of positions. That doesn't mean that White doesn't attack on the king side. Just because there's no king there doesn't mean that White doesn't want to play f5 and rook f1 and get stuck to the 7th rank. That attack is still going to be very dangerous, but at least Ferysev can breathe easy knowing that there's no checkmate imminent if White opens up the king side. Now, how will Ferysev arrange his pieces? Black is passive here. He's got his bishops on d7 and d7, passive but very solid. Look at how nicely defended all of Black's weaknesses are. e6 and d6 are under firm lock and key. But how will Ferysev get stuff going on the queen side? How will he attack White's king? Will he go a5? Will he double his rooks on the c-file? He's got a lot less time. And Vasquez is known for playing really, really quickly, even in blitz. He always has a big time advantage. That's one of those things which makes him so dangerous. And Vladimir, he's having a hard time figuring out a way to coordinate his pieces. I would go rook c7 here and consider doubling. But the problem with that is that White's going to go rook h to f1. What does that do? Well, that threatens f takes e6 and rook f7, and queen d8 is not a great sign. That tells me that Ferysev is quite worried about his position. Now, he also might be opening up the pathway for the b pawn to march forward to b5 and b4. The issue is that if the pawn reaches b5, white can simply play a3 and prevent further progress of that pawn. So we saw Jospin doing something similar in the previous game. Rook h to g1, elected by Castor. G6 by Ferysev. He tries to prevent the progress of white's pawns, but f6, Castor driving that pawn in and knocking the bishop off to f8. Now the rook on h8 is imprisoned, although it can break out of jail with h6 and h takes g5 and try to activate down the h file. Ferysev pushed to the last few ranks, but he's still very solid. His position is rock solid, and white trying to break it down. Let's have a glance at the Artemiev game, which, by the way, is heating up. And Artemiev is a great position. Something happened to Andrekin's pawn structure on the king side. What happened? This was totally fine. And Andrekin, oh, he missed knight f4. This is a trade which ruins white's kingside pawn structure, and Artemiev has a great shot at winning this game. This is not a position you see Andrekin in every day. He's got a terrible structure. His queen and bishop are biting on granite. There's no question that Artemiev is much better here. He's also got a lot of time, which for him is a great luxury. I feel like he senses it. Knight h4, forcing the trade of bishops. Now, you don't want to take the knight, because then white takes the bishop. I think Vladislav is going to take on g2, and then probably take on d4, and maybe swing this knight out from d7 to c5, maybe even get the queen to f3 in some positions. He's sitting pretty here. He could also drop his bishop back to d5 and try to trade on his own terms. Bishop d5 might actually force white to take the bishop and let this queen get active. Nah, he decides not to bother. He trades. I like that decision. He plays simple and strong b5 here. My preference would be to take and go knight c5. Let's see whether he does that. He does take. It's in Artemiev style, though, to go rook f d8, for example. He likes to play flexibly. He doesn't always like to reveal his intentions, but knight c5 looks so attractive, opening up that d file. He decides to trade, and will we see rook c8? No, now he goes rook d8. Okay, so he does kind of do that, and he's still looking at knight c5. That move might come at any second. Let's swing back here, as we've got Vasquez continuing to apply tremendous pressure on Ferisev's position. White's got a pawn all the way driven to h7. That pawn is actually nicely defended by the queen and the rook, but right now it's not going anywhere. It is restrained by Ferisev's rook on h8. And look at what Vladimir is doing. Previously, he got his knight from e5 to c5. Now he gets his knight from c5 to e5. Vasquez says, no, you're not doing anything. He goes knight f3, preventing, or at least taking the sting out of knight e5, which would lead now to a knight trade. Bishop g7, but look at Vladimir. He wants to snap off that knight on c3 and crush white's entire king position. White's got to do something about that. Maybe rook d3. Maybe, I don't know, knight a4 is also possible. He does go rook d3, but that walks into knight c5 with tempo. I feel like Vladimir has a chance now to reactivate his knight. He does, and maybe rook e3 can be met with queen f4. I feel like Vladimir is taking over the initiative here. This is so exciting. We might have a tie for first if they both win their games. How insane would that be? Let's swing back for a second to Artemiev's game, and he's back at 20 seconds. Now he's in familiar territory, and he is clearly better in this position. Andrekin has horrible pawns on the king side, but just those pawns are not enough. Bad pawn structure doesn't lose you games. Good moves wins you games. How does Artemiev convert White's bad pawn structure into something tangible? He's got 8 seconds, and Andrekin is such a good defender. I feel now like Andrekin, the worst is behind him. I think he should be able to hold a draw, but Artemiev is going to do everything he can to create chances. Ferisev's game right now is a little bit more interesting, and look at what Vladimir is doing. He's winning everything. Knight c4, though, threatening knight. This has to be winning for black at this point. Knight takes b3, cb. Still unclear. 36 seconds now for both players. This could go either way. All three results are possible. It looks amazing for black, but black's got a lot of problems in his position as well. The knight is threatening to jump to b6 with a fork. Let's not forget that white still is a passer on h7, so almost all endgames are going to be super dangerous for Vladimir, and he takes on b3. Will white throw in knight b6 check as an intermezzo? He does. King b8 is forced. Do not go king a7 and blunder the rook with check. He doesn't. Knight takes 8. Knight d2 check. Knight d2 check. Oh my god, he allows this knight to jump in. Wait a second, I think, oh my god, black's winning. Knight c4? He plays it? Oh, this has to be winning for black. He could also just take the knight here. Vladimir could just take the knight. And he's got 2 pieces for a rook. He's got a huge attack on black's king. And after he takes the knight, whoa. Queen g5, what does he want? Queen c5. Oh, he's aiming at that pawn. He's aiming at that pawn. How does Vasquez defend? And we're going to see a king hunt, but that king is escaping toward the center. Bishop comes out to b5. Black has to be winning here. But can Rodrigo Vasquez survive this onslaught? No, but that's not the way to do it. Knight takes d6. He tries to pin the knight. Fedyseev is just a couple of accurate moves away from winning, but queen g3 is an amazing move. He's got 4 seconds to... Oh, and queen takes d6. Fedyseev didn't see a move. He lost his knight. Queen d8 check. I think queen d8 check wins. He finds it. He's going to promote to another queen. He's going to have 2 rooks, and Vasquez is going to, I think, win this game and steal it from Fedyseev. What a heartbreaker. Queen b2. Fedyseev is almost out of checks. He's doing his best. Wait, queen e1. He's got perpetual. Does he have perpetual? No, he plays queen takes h4 and blunders mate. He plays queen takes h4 and blunders mate. Queen g7 is mate. He had perpetual there with queen b4. How many twists and turns are we seeing? And now it's all down to Artemiev's game. He's got no time on the clock, and he continues to poke and prod. Bishop e1. If he wins the tournament. Fedyseev has lost. If he draws, he wins the tournament. All Artemiev needs is a draw. But will he lose on time? He might lose this game. Oh my goodness, both of them might lose. Queen takes f7, bishop takes f2. There might be perpetual. He's hanging by a thread. Artemiev has overpressed. He's overpressed, and a draw wins the tournament for him as he tries to break free with a pawn sacrifice. Now it's Andreykin with chances to win the game. I think Andreykin might be winning. He's going to go e4, and he's going to try to get this pawn phalanx going forward. Can Artemiev hold this to win the tournament? If Artemiev loses, then a logjam at the top will result with 9 out of 10. That is a rare scenario as Artemiev doing his best. But it's lost. Bishop d8. Wait, f5. F5 wins the piece. Oh my goodness. Both the leaders lost. This is one of those unbelievable finishes I've ever seen. Fedyseev and Artemiev both lose. Both of them in winning positions. Artemiev seemed to have an unlosable position. And he lost too. And he overpressed. He probably maybe even looked at Fedyseev's position, thought, hey, Vladimir's got this in the bag. I got to win. I got to do whatever it takes. I have nothing to lose. He's going to be kicking himself knowing that a draw, just offering a draw, which unquestionably Andreykin would have accepted, would have won him the tournament. But hindsight's 2020. There was no way of knowing that for him. And that time pressure, that got him in the end. He won 2 of those. But Andreykin, not to be trifled with, he turns it around. He defeats Artemiev, and he's going to share in first place with a big group. Let's take a look as the games wind down at the final standings. What an incredible finale we just had. Okay, so we have here, and let me go to the standings only. We've got a 5-way tie for first place. That is not something you see every day in TT. We have Fedyseev and Artemiev who remain tied for first, but to them also has joined Andreykin, who defeated Artemiev, Parham Maksudlu, who won his game to get on 9 out of 11, and Castor, that's Rodrigo Vasquez. I don't think he's played in too many of the Title Tuesdays. He's an incredibly strong blitz player. Don't sleep on him. He's very experienced, and he's been strong for many decades now, and he defeats Fedyseev in the last round to get to top place. A 5-way tie for first place in the late Title Tuesday. The tournament is over, and what a tournament it was. A 5-way tie, and once again, Artemiev, Fedyseev, Andreykin technically in first place by tie breaks. Wow. Fedyseev in second, Artemiev in third, Parham in fourth, and Rodrigo Vasquez-Schroeder in fifth. But all of them are tied for first place with 9 out of 11. The prize will be split. And you know what that means, ladies and gentlemen? A full day of action. We had the Grand Prix. We had Title Tuesdays. We need a little bit of a break, and it's time for me to wrap up. I hope you enjoyed the action. This was a Title Tuesday for the ages. Twists and turns abound. This is why we watch. This is why we play. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, a 5-way tie for first place in the late edition of Title Tuesday. Title Tuesday will happen as normal next week at the usual times. You can find all of the information on the chess.com official Titled Tuesday page. I hope you enjoyed the tournament and the coverage. Thank you to everyone for watching on Twitch and YouTube and supporting your favorite players. And we will see you very soon, probably next Tuesday. This was Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky covering the late Titled Tuesday. Thank you and goodbye. Oh, I guess I said goodbye formally with my camera. Goodbye.